Hello, everybody, and welcome to Film Independent Presents, Film Independent's year-round screening program, now taking place fully online, but someday we'll be back in theaters. I'm Josh Welsh, I'm president of Film Independent, and I want to welcome you all. Thank you for being here today. I am so excited to be able to moderate this conversation around the film The Artist's Wife with writer, director, producer Tom Dolby, and the amazing, legendary actor, Lena Olin. It's really an honor to be here talking with both of you. Before we get started, I want to give some special thanks to the people that make this possible. Thank you to our incredible lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, for your generous year-round support. Thank you to our virtual screening partner, Vision Media. I love watching stuff on Vision Media. And lastly, thanks to our media partner, the Los Angeles Times. With that, let's dive in. I just want to start, I'll start just by saying how much I love this film. I was aware of the film, I knew who was in it. And Tom, I'm familiar with you, and I know you more as a producer. So, but I hadn't read much about the film, and I saw it, which is the way I love to see a film, not knowing that much about it. I went in and it was just a revelation to me. I mean, it is a beautifully made film with an incredible cast and the richest sense of relationships between everyone in this story. Immediately off, as you enter the world, you just have this sense of a lived-in world, and I just loved it. So most people watching this, I suspect, have seen the film at our earlier screening of it, but for anyone who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend to go find the film and watch it. But Tom, just to kick things off, I'd love to hear about how you came up with this. So I know there were 3 writers on it, but this originated with you. And what was the seed of this film for you?
It was a few different well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. It's so nice to hear. It was several impulses. I had for many years wanted to do something about an artist couple, but really exploring the wife's story, the idea of sort of the woman next to the man. I felt like that had not been explored very often in film, though we'd seen those relationships. It was so often focused on the male half of the relationship. And then around that time that I was coming up with the story, my father was diagnosed with dementia, and I just had this moment where I was thinking, like, I have to put this into this. This has to become an integral part of this situation. And I think the third impulse was exactly what you're talking about, the family, doing something about family dynamics. That was so interesting to me, and to show particularly a mature relationship, a couple that has lived a marriage, and what that's like. I think we rarely see that on film. I think, characters over the age of 50 or so are often sort of relegated to the sidelines. And I just felt there was so much to explore there.
Yeah. So, and then with the other, when did the project start? When did you begin writing? When did this all come together?
I started around 2008 or so. And I thought, sort of like my first film, I thought it would be a novel at first. And so I started sketching it out as a novel, and then it became clear that it was a film. And then Nicole Brending and I started collaborating and went through several drafts of the script. And then we brought on Abdi Nazemian, who was really helped shape so much of the relationship with Angela and that whole element of the script, which is obviously such an important element in sort of rounding out Claire and Richard's world.
Mm-hmm. Lena, how did this project come to you? How did you first come across the script, and what was your initial reaction?
I was actually doing a play in Stockholm. I hadn't done theater in the longest time, and I was doing Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And as you know, she's such a drunk. She's such a, and then when I read the story, and this female character is so sweet and so caring and yet so powerful. And I really loved her compassion and her, I mean, she's full of flaws, obviously, but there was something so different about her power, because I find her super powerful, but in such a different way. So I was so taken by Claire as a character. And then, of course, when I read it again, and it's about, you know, that I think a lot of women can relate to when life goes on and you do what life asks you to do. You're needed in so many different ways. And I think sometimes we leave behind parts of ourselves. It's almost like when you look at an old photo from like 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and you think you look the same, and you see the picture and you're like, no, that was a completely different person. And I think that's what happened to Claire, that when she met Richard, she was an aspiring, she was a painter, and she was in art school, and she fell in love with this dynamic teacher. And I think they had a fantastic marriage for a long time. But slowly she starts abandoning what's important to her and becomes his art and his career and his world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the thing I love most about the film and your performance is, I mean, Claire is so active throughout all of it. And the film is called The Artist's Wife. It's your story. I mean, I love that, Tom, you alluded to. It's like often you see this relationship that is told through the lens of the great man. And here, I mean, he's Bruce Dern, first of all, and his character is incredibly rich too. But before getting to that, I mean, you are like reclaiming your life. You're with the thing you were just talking about. There's this clear sense of your past and what you've given up, and you're going back for it. You're dealing with him. You're dealing with his daughter. There's just this constant like energy and action coming from you that I thought was beautiful. And the lens of the film is like, I like the fact. I mean, what's really to me unusual in the film is so many of the characters are fully fleshed out and drawn, like the daughter and various friends. The babysitter has a very vivid presence. You're like, I get who this guy is and his role here, but it all comes back to you and sort of you know your everything that you're going through, but in a totally active way, which I don't know. I find that just so watchable. Like it's like I want to go with you and see where you're going to end up.
I love the how you reclaiming her life, because that's what she does, how you phrased it. But she doesn't do it. She acts because out of love. She loves this man. She tries to protect him. She tries to help him. And I think it's a little bit the power of love, actually, and the power of the art of love. I think that's in some poster or something, but that is what she doesn't do it in any form of as a revenge, and now you've deserted me, you betrayed me, and I'm going to get my life back. It's out of love that she gains access to her creativity again, that she gains back her life, and I think that's something that I really like.
Mm-hmm. Could you talk a bit about so I'm very curious about this, your relationship with your husband in the film, played by Bruce Dern. I'm curious, I don't know if I should have done some research and looked this up. I don't know if you've ever worked with Bruce before, but
Never.
Talk about, did you have time? I know oftentimes on independent films, there's not a lot of time for rehearsal or anything before shooting. Did you have time with Bruce? And what was the experience of working with him like? Because there's, I believe this marriage, right? That is you're spending time with people who have such a history, and I'm curious what that experience was like for you.
With the schedules, it didn't work out, so we could use any time for rehearsal, or we had to start shooting. So I remember the first time I heard Bruce, that's why, he was doing his wardrobe fitting, and we had a scene the next day. Oh my gosh, we've never met, we've never had a conversation, none of that. And it was so wonderful, because the minute the slate boom and the camera started rolling, it was just there. And Bruce is so invigorating and so fun and so there, and he the longer the shoot went on and the closer we came to our characters, I felt like we could do anything. We could, you had to be there. You had to be there, show up and be present in the moment, because Bruce will go off and say things that's not in the script. He will do things that no one had asked him to do. And all of that I just loved. It was so fun. And so, and there was because he's very loving and very generous with his fellow actors. So you felt very much that he has your back, but then we were on this roller coaster and you never knew what was coming up next, which actually was amazing. And I think it creates, and I think Tom was great in letting it play out and not be controlling, because I think you might lose so much authenticity if you do that as a director. If you're like, who asked you to, if you have the patience and the bravery to let the actors surprise you, I think that's really great.
Well, it really comes through in your scenes together. And one thing you said in response to an earlier question of how, you were approaching this as it's an act of love, not of revenge. That came, I mean, what I love, again, from your performance in that relationship is you get that sense of history and of, I mean, you've obviously suffered a lot in certain ways in that marriage and and given up parts of yourself, but there's so much affection for him and mixed in with the frustration and the undoubtedly rage. And, but you're not it doesn't turn into that one note of like, I'm going to get revenge on you, you bastard.
And exactly. And isn't that what life is like so many times? It's like, I wish I could but I still, in many different kind of relationships with your spouse maybe, but also with, friends that you like, you're such an idiot, but I love you so much, that's sort of, and I love the complexity, how complex the relationship was.
Yeah. Tom, could you talk a bit about casting and how you came to your cast, and especially with your two leads?
Yeah, I mean, it's all, there's this sort of ineffable idea of chemistry, and Lena sort of alluded to it, and, you're taking two people who've never met each other, and for me, it was really just kind of going on instinct, because I had also, I'd never met either of them, but Lena and I were getting to know each other as around the time that we decided to go to Bruce for this, and Lena, I remember you coming up to me on the first day and you said, "Ooh, there's something there. I'm feeling something." And you had told me very early on in the process, like several months before we started shooting, as we were getting to know each other in that fall, that sometimes you get lucky and there's a natural chemistry, and sometimes there isn't, and you have to sort of create it. And I felt like we got so lucky. There was such a natural chemistry, and then both of you have the craft of acting to sort of bring it all the way and create this fully fleshed out marriage, which to me was an amazing thing. And then we cast Juliet Rylance, and Avan Jogia actually came to us pretty early on. He had been interested in the project for about a year. And he was somebody that I had sort of been following, and I hadn't realized it was the same person when I saw the audition tape, but I was excited by the audition tape. So that was a nice thing. And then, and then little Gogo, boy, we looked at a lot of little kids, and he just, I remember him, he was so natural, and I loved that he had never had any formal training. So there were no tricks. There was no like cute kid stuff. And we did like a little interview after he did his reading, and I said, well, what do you like about acting? And he said, well, I just like playing different characters. That's really exciting to me. And I thought, well, that's the best answer that a 7-year-old can give you. I mean, that makes total sense. It wasn't like, oh, well, my mom takes me to these, So I got so lucky with the chemistry between everybody.
one of the standout scenes to me was that the moment of unwrapping Christmas presents, where they're sitting around the living room with the silver Christmas tree. And it's one of those scenes where there's so much like you're just captivated, not knowing what's going to happen. There's so much tension, really driven by Bruce Dern. Like, what the hell is he going to say? How offensive is it going to be? What racist comment or horrible thing that's going to, to the boy. But you want it, it's going to happen, and you're just watching that. And as a director, I'm curious how you approach a scene like that, because that's a lot of the scenes are more. You have a lot of scenes where it's two people. It's more intimate between the two, but there you have the whole family dynamic.
Those scenes were challenging to shoot, just because there was just a lot of coordination, and you have these things that are so simple. It's just even like, how are you going to unwrap the gift and like not have it be completely boring and take up like 30 seconds of screen time, or how's she going to go all the way across the room and, do the painting and whatever. And then some of that, comes together in the editing room. But again, it comes down to the chemistry, and, you shoot your master, and I tend to shoot a lot. I would do maybe 5 takes, 6 takes, 7 takes of the wide. And I remember one of my producers was saying, don't waste time on the wide. You're not going to use it. And I said, yeah, but I need to understand how it's all fitting together. Mm-hmm. And then you do your close-ups, and, by that point, everybody is very familiar with what's going on. And I love what you're saying about how there is an uncomfortableness in that scene. Absolutely. But you also feel like he's been sort of given a little slap on the wrist by Claire. He knows he's misbehaved, and you have both this like anger and resentment that he has at his own health situation, but also this like idea of like, I need to have my best, be on my best behavior, And then Claire is just, to me, just holding it all together, which I just see. I mean, I can just relate so much to that, of like, you want everything to be perfect, the perfect Christmas. And she is holding everything together by a shoestring,
And I think that's very relatable, that most people have been in these family or friend situation where someone is just, because we all have somebody who will behave badly in our close circle, and it's that kind of, I remember shooting that. It was so painful. It was extremely painful, because it's that tension. It's supposed to be nice, and there's a child involved, and you want it to be holidays and fun and festive, and I just can feel this, my stomach going like cramping, like I can't handle this anymore. And I think most people can relate to that horrible feeling when you want it to be nice and you want it to be perfect. And I know you're a perfectionist, Tom, and you shared so much with me, and I could really use that for Claire, who just wants everything to be good, and she's gotten them there, and there's a chance to reconnect, and then he blows it, because he's
He does blow it.
Yeah.
His performance in there, I thought, was really interesting, because he's so volatile and got that quicksilver thing where you don't know what's going to happen. But in a lot of that, he got very still. I noticed like he was just barely moving on the couch and just observing, and it was like almost made it scarier, because it's like, oh my God, like what is he going to say? He didn't have that playful thing that he does so well. It was more like starting to turn really menacing, and of course it doesn't go well. But it was a beautifully acted and directed scene. Tom, one other thing I want to say about Bruce, and I don't know if this was your intention or not, or maybe it was just how I saw it, but even though he's, late in life, and he's got early on, well, not early, but he has the beginnings of dementia starting, I felt like Bruce Dern in this performance seemed younger to me than I've seen him lately. Like he had a vitality, and I don't know if it was because of you, Lena, like when you were with him, I felt he lost like 10 years. Like he was a very alive, vital guy, right? He was sexual, he was affectionate, he was pissed off. Like
I agree.
It was really, really great to see that.
Lena is, I can give a lot of credit to Lena, for that. And I think he just also was playing this character who really was doing things, you know, and I remember when we talked about the costumes for him, and my costume designer, Jamie Villers, who's brilliant, she looked at photos of him and she said he feels the youngest and the most attractive in sort of dark, rich colors. And we went for sort of darker browns and burgundy, and that made, she's like, I'm not going to put him in like a white shirt, you know. And it was, I think that there was this idea, you know, these kind of rugged like plaid shirts with paint splattered on them. He was a character who was doing things, and I think that also really adds a lot of vitality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
He was flirtatious in such a sweet way, you know, in such a, you know, which was so endearing and so adorable and made him so young. I thought, just lovely.
Yeah, no, I remember it was, I think, the first or second day, and he was sitting in this chair, you know, waiting for the next setup, and he kind of motions. He goes, you know, I think Lena's the most beautiful woman I've ever had the privilege to play against in a movie. And so of course I told her, you know, because you want to, you know, anyone wants to hear a compliment like that. But I thought it was sweet. It was so sweet.
Yeah, very sweet, very, very, very sweet.
This is way off topic, but a few years ago, Bruce, at Film Independent, we produce a film financing market for independent filmmakers who are, you know, generally younger, like young filmmakers trying to get financing for their first features. And Bruce reached out, and he had a film he was developing, and he wanted to go through it. And so we took him in this market. And I mean, age was irrelevant, but when he was in it, he was just like any other indie filmmaker. And he took the meetings with every packaging agent, financier, whoever we could get him. He was totally charming, and no pride or ego about like, I'm Bruce Dern. He was there just pitching it hard and passionate about his movie. And it was really inspiring to me to see like that, just the creative force, right? He's somebody who obviously will be creative his entire life and just pursues it so authentically. Tom, could you just talk a bit about the production and, you know, I have a lot of questions, like how long did you shoot? Where did you shoot, first of all? This is beautiful. And were you shooting over Christmas? Where did you shoot? What were the basic plans?
It was January and February, and we were really limited to those months because we wanted as much snow on the ground as possible. And we did get, it's interesting, the snow in the movie is a mix of actual snow that had just fallen and snow that we brought in, and then sort of digital snow in some cases, which was done quite skillfully. It's sort of amazing what they can do these days. And it was in East Hampton, and this house was, I think, you know, it's that cliche of like the house is its own character, but it really was. It felt like that was Claire's world. That was this sort of box. It was this like beautiful gilded cage that she was in, and she had created for herself, and she was in, you know, we see her realizing, okay, I don't want to be stuck in this box anymore.
The foundation is literally cracking. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you were shooting January, February in East Hampton, and could you talk a bit about your crew and how you pulled things together? I'd love to hear anything you want to share about your specifically production designer and cinematographer, because the film is gorgeous and has a very particular aesthetic and look. If you could talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a wonderful DP, Ryan Parker, and he was just so collaborative and so much. As we started to meet and do some shot listing, and I would sort of sketch little things in my notebook, and you know, this is how I see it. And then sometimes at that point you don't even actually have some of your locations yet, so you're, you know, it's kind of all, it's in your head, and then, you know, and sometimes you get to a location and it's like, okay, what are we going to do here? One of the production challenges in relation to shooting and where the camera goes was we were in real spaces for almost the entire film. We did a little bit on a stage in terms of some of the gallery scenes, but we were in real spaces, and there wasn't that much room. And then it's like, you have all these scenes in the kitchen, and how many different ways can you shoot this kitchen when there's like 2 feet of space, between you and the actor. And so we really, had to get creative, and Ryan was, was so great with that. And the use of color and light was, was really important. I don't know if I will ever do a movie again that has so many windows and reflective surfaces. That it's like one of those things you never think about, and it's like, wait, we can't do it there because like you can see the whole crew in the back, and this just all these little things. I learned so much during the process.
I love the contrast between that, the look and the feel of that house, and then the barn that Lena, that you go get for your own work. I mean, that was just such a beautiful space, and such a,
yeah, it was really her internal world. I mean, I think those 2 spaces in particular were so representative of what she was feeling. And we saw, if the house was sort of this cold yet beautiful box, the barn was like this nurturing womb of creativity where she could, sort of like the butterfly developing in the cocoon, and that was, we really used, very different color palette, and, even in her costumes, I love how funky we were able to get with those jeans. I don't know what they were, like vintage jeans or something it was wearing. And, it was, some of these things happen by serendipity, because you don't know what's going to be on the rack that day to pick from, or the day before, or whatever, whenever you're planning it. And, you've known your location, you've only been familiar with it for like a week or something. And so, but you have these moments of getting lucky, and that's a beautiful thing.
There was also a wild side to the barn, which I loved, which sort of reflected the lack of order, that it was suddenly, everything was a mess, but a creative mess, and everything was crazy and wild. Whereas the house was, here are the blueberries, and here's the salmon, and here is that painting, and that, that sort of represented what she, exactly what you said. It represented what she found within herself when she looked.
I have a question for both of you, that it's not so much about the craft of this particular film, but I don't know how to articulate this question, but to me, this film, it's a beautifully made, it's a drama with real human relations, with a sense of history and a lived-in quality, and you're spending time with these characters. There's a lot of nuance, and you're tracking kind of the emotional beats throughout. And I'm wondering how you both feel about this type of filmmaking, because obviously there's a lot of great storytelling today, and great films and great television, but that, like, in the film space, I feel like this is becoming, certainly from the studios, they don't make this kind of movie anymore, right? I mean, This is being shut out from the culture in certain ways. It still exists in independent film, and I think it exists in certain types of TV. But I'm just curious, I mean, for you, Lena, like I'm sure you get lots and lots, you're reading all kinds of stuff, and do you feel, I'm just, if you have any thoughts on this, this type of, and you've done such a wide range of different types of things, but you've done, how does this type of work speak to you? And do you see it pulling away, or less opportunity?
I hope not. I pray that we're going to still find stories like this, and people who are interested in telling them, and people who are interested in watching them. And I think that must be so. That must be, because if we take all of that, because I mean, obviously the big adventure films, the big action, they're going to live. But it's exactly this kind of film that's in danger now. And I feel that if you make films like this, people want to see it. It's just the response and the need to see, because otherwise, and when Scorsese talked about how he was shaped as a human being through cinema and through films, and through that, this is something that we need to keep. And I think a lot of people, it's independent films where you find some of the really good scripts, because like you said, it's changing, and we must just hold on and keep working on it, because that would be such a loss if these films didn't exist anymore. That would be horrible.
Yeah, I agree.
I was really inspired by like films of the 1970s, going all the way back, 1970s, 1980s. I mean, I was referencing like Ordinary People, Kramer versus Kramer, this film called Shoot the Moon with Diane Keaton and Albert Finney. I mean, and families going through conflict, but in a very real sort of way. And those were studio films. I mean, it's like
studio,
to think that they were, you do have like Marriage Story last year. That's a wonderful film about real situations that was, done in a studio sort of way. But it's, you're absolutely right. It's so rare. We were introduced in Palm Springs by the director of the festival, and he said to the audience, it's so refreshing to see a movie that's not a superhero movie. And, so I guess this is about superheroes of a different kind, right?
Yeah. Well, let me see. We have a lot of questions here. I like this first one. Blanca says, this film reminded me of artist couples like Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner, Annie and Joseph Albers, and so many more artistic pairs. Did any historical figures influence your performance? I had that same question. I was wondering about, was it Robert Motherwell? And I forget who he was.
I think that through time, female painters have been pushed to the side. And I read up and I watched a ton of documentaries, and yes, all of these, I think that this is a story that touches all of these, where I'm not sure, is it just art, or why is it just with painters, where the woman takes aside, that the woman ceased to exist as a painter in the relationship. It's really, and I'm gonna be in a film about a female painter, Hilma af Klint, who was Swedish and was the first abstract painter, and she never got any recognition. And 10 years later, when Mondrian and Kandinsky started abstract painting, they were the inventors of abstract painting, and she had done it for a decade. And it's so interesting how women just, it's interesting. And of course, it did inspire me when I played Claire.
Mm-hmm. Another question. Matt asks, Tom, can you tell us the secret of creating fake art for a movie that is credible as actual good art? That's a great question. I agree. This was good fake art. So often films fail at doing this.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I mean, I have to credit our production designer, John L. Manahi, who is an artist in his own right, and who was just incredible in creating all of these pieces of art. And he had a team that he was working with, but it was really John who brought them to life and put the finishing touches on them, and came up with sort of the conceptual ideas. And you have to be very careful, because you can't, the art in their house, some was inspired by other artists, but you can't copy. You're not allowed to do that. We didn't want to do that. So it was like creating, for the decor of the house, creating things that just had kind of the essence of, like a Motherwell or a Richard Serra or something. And then for Richard and for Claire and for their art, just creating, John and I would talk a lot about like, this is what, and Lee Krasner actually was very inspiring for me. And I sent him a bunch of Lee Krasner images for Claire's. I felt like the sort of organic shapes spoke to me. And so he would work on something and he would text me a photo. And I mean, it literally came down to like, how about a little more red in, the lower right-hand corner and stuff. And you just, it's when you have a great team, you can work together and do it quickly,
Another question. I really appreciated the sensitive way the film sheds light and creates conversation about dementia and Alzheimer's. Were there any challenges in being sensitive to this topic? So you mentioned at the outset, you were coming from a place of personal connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge when doing a movie about a topic like that is not to make it sort of overly tragic or maudlin in any way. I mean, the worst version of a movie like that is as we sort of a Lifetime movie. I mean, the poor Lifetime network seems to get all the knocks, though I'm sure they're doing good things these days. But you know, it was like the challenge, and you know, with the doctor's office scenes, we didn't want to do, you know, the cognitive tests and the looking at brain scans and stuff. I wanted it to be a little more impressionistic, and I never felt the sort of pressure to do like the doctor's office visit from beginning to end. It's more like we just capture these moments that Claire, and it's very focused on Claire and what she's experiencing.
You know, sorry, go ahead, Lena.
I think that we got a lot of help from the doctor who actually treated Tom's dad, who was extremely helpful. And we could really ask her a ton of questions, like, how does a spouse or a loved somebody who loves the person who's sick, how do they react? And she talked about all the different reactions she gets, from like denial, aggression, total despair, and, you know, all of that. So we did a lot of work in preparing. And I think also for me, what I really loved it, which is in the script, that it's a marriage, and then this happens to a wonderful marriage, or a complicated, but a true marriage. So it's not like two people who lived a life waiting for one of them to get Alzheimer. You know, it's like, is that all they do, that they have, you know? And I think that felt so, that I felt like we were sensitive to the real thing by portraying two people who were still laughing and still it was really important to show the relationship. And then this happens, but it's not like I'm not sure I'm explaining it.
Yeah.
So I think you get what I mean. Yeah.
You know, Lena, as you were talking, I just remembered the scene in the doctor's office where you're essentially told that he has dementia or Alzheimer's, and it's not really a monologue, but your reaction there is so amazing. Where you start off just again, it goes back to this thing we were talking about at the beginning of how active Claire is. And like her whole response is active in denying it. It's like, oh no, but he's unconventional. He's an artist. He's crazy. Like why does everyone have to be so buttoned down? But then there's this moment where you just pivot on a dime, and you're like, you kind of accept it. But then it's like, well, what do I do? How do I handle it? And like, you never lose that active driving forward quality, and it feels real too. It's like, right, people do that, trying to like denying something, then accepting it, but trying to live through it. It's a beautiful moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another question for Lena, could you talk about the sexual experience with the babysitter? It seems like it was a relief for Claire in several ways. Both characters were impulsive and looser, due in part to drinking so much, but they also had a connection from your first meeting.
I think it's something that, and also I felt Tom's mom, who is not Claire, but she's experienced what Claire goes through, in the sense that she's been the spouse, loved someone who gets this disease. And in interviewing her, she said something she said, I lost my best buddy. And I feel that you lose the person who's closest to your soul, and your best friend, and I think that with this young man, it's so unexpected, but there is a connection. And he's also an artist, and he tries, and he doesn't get any respect, or he's not a successful artist, but he's trying very hard. And I think the connection, she so desperately needs to connect to someone, because she's losing her husband, his soul, you know, she loses that connection. I think it's that desperation, and also the alcohol, but I think it's more a true connection. And I think she realizes, and that's what I also like about the character, that she is so full of flaws, because that's not a good thing to go out and cheat on a husband who's sick. That's not good, but she makes mistakes, and I think I really like that. I do really like that, because she becomes so human, and I think it's connecting with someone in this despair is like, and obviously she does something that's wrong, but I think it's all of the above.
This might be a silly comment, but I remember the scene in the barn when you light up a cigarette. It almost felt similar to me. Like, it's the only time we see you smoke, I think. And it was,
yeah.
I think it was like probably a behavior you used to do when you were painting. And it's like,
exactly. Yeah.
And it looked like a really good cigarette. I was like, oh,
yeah.
that looks good. So, Tom, somebody has a question. We've talked about this a bit, but I think it's good to bring it up again. Someone says, Tom, the film creates beautiful moments of intimacy. Can you talk about how you achieved this? Could you elaborate on like what was the set like? I mean, was the intimacy achieved through the casting and the writing, or do you run a set in a particular way to help foster that?
I think it's all of those things. I mean, I do see a set as a little bit like a family, and I think with your actors, it's so important to protect. Like, I've never understood directors who like yell at anybody, really, and definitely not at their actors, because you have to create this sort of nurturing, safe environment. And so, we particularly have this like double metaphor, because we were creating this family on screen, but then I'm working with these people who are like my creative family and my creative partners in doing all this. And you get a level of trust. So there's just a shorthand, and I would give Lena a note, and I'd be like halfway through like the second sentence, and she'd go, oh yeah, no, I know what you mean, I've got it. We knew what each other were thinking. And I think that comes when you have that level of trust in each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think that also comes from indie filmmaking, that it helps, because exactly what Tom was saying, it becomes like a family, and that's why this is so addictive to work, because it's this family feeling, and we're all in it, and it's like a team, and all of these great things. And an indie film doesn't have the traps where you have the big trailers where
Right.
you recline every time you it reminds me of how I grew up as an actor, because in Sweden nobody had that kind of luxury. It was very political and sort of socialistic, and but it also it's a friendship that's created. You're hanging out with the crew and the people you're working with, because there's nowhere else to be. We had the house, and you had a room in the house, but it creates this, that we're in it together, and everyone is there because they love the story and they want to tell the story, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think creating that off-screen, the intimacy that is created off-screen between the actors. I mean, I completely agree with you, Lena, about trailers. I've never done a movie with trailers, and I don't know what that would be like, because the idea, it is important that actors, and even for me, that I had a room I could go to, but I probably spent about 20 minutes over 12 hours in that room, and I needed that 20 minutes. And actors do too sometimes, but I think it's so important to have like those hangout spaces. I feel like if I did a movie that had the budget for trailers, I would want like a special lounge trailer that everybody could just hang out in.
Yeah.
I had that on my last movie. The kids all played pool, in the holding house. There was a pool table. It was just great, because then you got the sense on screen that they were all friends and they knew each other,
Yeah.
So another question from Blanca, who asks, I thought it was beautiful to see how the film showed a character who is nurturing creativity in another and returns to nurture that in herself. What inspires and nurtures your own creativity? I guess that's, for both of you, but starting with Lena.
Life, to be in life. And I find the more you try to lock yourself in something comfortable, or when you're, you need to always put yourself out of your comfort zone, because that's where the creativity lies. And it's hard, because it's easy, you're so drawn to just getting away from all that. And but I think to push yourself out of your comfort zone all the time, because I think that's where you get you know, that's where you feel the connection with your own creativity and other people, to life, to love, and to have the pain of love, and to have the glory of love, and to have the frustration and the disappointment and the excitement. And that's what's so fantastic about my job, that everything I live, I can I can use. There's nothing, except if I don't know any situation in life where I can't just sort of take it and use it in my job. That's really amazing.
That's beautiful. You know, I have to say, I don't know if it's the final shot, but the at the end, when the two of you come in the gallery and he sees you and walks towards you, and the look on his face, I actually burst out crying at that moment. It caught me off guard. I was like, the way it was the performances from the three of you and Tom, the way it was shot, like you captured that moment. And to me, it made me cry, because I don't know, there was something so unexpected, and I can't even say why I cried. It was just like, but it's, Lena, it's what you're saying. It's like, that was a lived moment. That was life happening on screen. And like, there was this element of delight on your face. And of course the audience has just been revealed that you know, your role in the paintings. And it's like, this incredible moment, and seeing Angela's reaction, but just, it was his face of like, he was so happy to see these two people together, you holding hands. I don't know, it was a beautiful moment. So to what you're saying, I mean, it really obviously comes through in your work, in all your films, but here it's really, really beautiful to see. So I'll close out with one last question from me, which is just, it's kind of the COVID question. I'd love to hear anything either of you have to say with how, like, as creative people, how are you getting through this, sustaining yourself, weathering it? Is the isolation feeding your creativity? Are you chomping at the bit to get out? You know, all those questions.
Wouldn't it be nice if it was just feeding, it was just feeding creativity? No, I think it's a daily challenge, you know, and it is isolating, and, you know, just force oneself to get out, and you know, those, I never thought that, you know, going to like a supermarket or going to Starbucks or something would be something that I needed for my mental health. I never thought it was important, but now I realize it was. Just seeing people on the street, you know, was important. People not wearing masks, you know, would be nice when all this is over. But yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah, I can't lie about that.
Lena, do you have any thoughts on how to get through this sort of moment in terms of your creative life?
I think we've been lucky, because my husband has been working on a script that is writing about this painter Hilma af Klint, and I'm going to play Hilma. So we have been able to have this, which I've never had, because it's usually that I get presented, or always I get presented with something and I read it, and then always, like when Tom and I work, or any job, you want to have your input, and you have, you know, opinions about different scenes or the character, but in this case, he's been able to come to me with a scene, and we can go through it, and it's almost like I can act it out, and he can say, oh, that doesn't work, I'm going to change that works, I'm going to do that. And like, but what if it's like almost like a collaboration that has been extremely fun, and normally that wouldn't have happened, so that's good. But also I think it's actually inspiring to feel how much we need other people, because the joy, like Tom was saying, just going to the supermarket and saying like, do you have oranges today? And it's like somebody who answers is like glorious, and we understand. We're doing these kinds of things, like that guy is usually in the room, or that girl who, you know, that we hugging people, you know, that old saying like, I need a hug. It's like, that's a little corny. We all need the hugs now, you know, to be able to hug people you really like, except for the immediate family. Can you imagine we're going to be so appreciative of all these things, because, you know, I don't think we realized how much it means.
I saw a friend the other day who hugged me, and it was the most shocking thing, right? Because I mean, she's fine, I'm fine. There's we're not affected, but it was kind of like this spontaneous hug, and it was beautiful. It was like, good thing. Yeah, I miss the hugs too.
Yeah.
Well, Lena and Tom, thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking with you. Congrats on this beautiful film. And again, everyone watching, whether you're watching this live or on our Facebook or YouTube, please, if you haven't seen it, go watch The Artist's Wife. You'll be very happy you did.